Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into a very special beer. This is one that I've had set aside for a few months until the timing was right, and today felt like that day for me. We are jumping into a beer from Firestone Walker Brewing Company. It's been a while. They're based in Paso Robles, California. Today's beer is their 20th anniversary ale. Now, they put out an anniversary ale every year that's kind of a combination of other beers that they produce, but this is a pretty big one. This is their 25-year version. This one clocks in at 11.5% ABV. It is a blended beer. It's a hodgepodge of a bunch of different styles. So really the best categorization for it is exactly what they call it, a strong ale. This specific year's release is a blend of their Parabola Autumn version. It's tequila barrel merkin, brandy barrel barley wine, sticky monkey, and whiskey barrel wheat wine. So we've got a hodgepodge of different barrels, big high ABV, low volume beers that they use to make their blended 25th anniversary ale. Awesome, awesome, awesome. This one sounded amazing. Came in a really nice box with a lot of information on the beer. Would make a great gift beer. The label art on this, as always with Firestone Walker, it's very straight and to the point. It's just a nice clean design that tells you what the beer is. So this is one I did get from Tavour. As always, I'm going to get this cracked, and we're using a nice all-purpose Sam Adams glass today. Since it's a blend of a bunch of different styles, I thought this nice tulip shape would do right for this beer. So we're going to pour it right in. Oh, nice dark brown. Not having a problem forming a head, and we will get that whole beer in there. It's just a 12-ounce bottle. Yeah, that formed a beautiful head. Nice, nice, nice. Get that last drop. All right. Visually, it's very dark. It's dark brown. It is not black. It's mostly, I would say it's roughly the color of between a brown ale and a porter. I can see very tiny, tight champagne-like carbonation rushing up. Obviously, it did form a pretty nice creamy head here. We're going to get right up for a sniff. Oh, yeah, wow. Yeah, there's a lot happening in this one. So it does kind of throw your nose for a loop. You can tell that there's spirit barrels, but it's such a hodgepodge between, let's say we've got whiskey, brandy, tequila. So that's 3 big barrels with distinctly different aromas, but you can smell quite clearly that it's a spirit barrel. You can also smell a lot of caramel and kind of figs and plums, kind of richer fruit coming off of the nose on this, which makes sense considering the blend of beers. It smells spirit-laden and it smells very malt-centric. It smells like a fantastic beer. The head is already kind of sort of collapsed, the creamy part, but it's very active in terms of carbonation. It's very tight, so it's still in the middle. I know the camera's probably not picking it up, but it's constantly trying to reform that nice creamy head coming straight up in the middle of this glass. It looks lovely. So it smells great. It looks great. Let's jump right in, see what we think. Oh man, that's a big beer. Wow, that is a shock to the senses. There's so much information bouncing on the palate, it doesn't know what to make of what it's tasting, but in the best way possible. So before we even get into the flavor profile, let's talk texture and let's talk weight. It's 11.5%. Feels weighty. I would say it's a solid medium heavy. You might expect it to be a little bit heavier than that given the ABV, but it doesn't feel like a light beer. It feels substantive. It's got a very nice weight to it. In terms of texture, the mouthfeel, very, very silky smooth. This one, it's very velvety, very creamy, very, very nice, and you can really feel the resistance there. And it's a wonderful, silky, smooth resistance. So you can feel that thickness, that resistance the beer naturally has, and just a lovely texture to it to pair with that nice medium heavy body. It's very nice. Weight and body. In terms of the flavor profile, I honestly don't even know where to begin because my palate is still processing a boatload of new information. So I think we're just going to start back by reminding you again what this is a blend of. Autumn edition of Parabola, tequila barrel merkin, brandy barrel barley wine, sticky monkey, and whiskey barrel wheat wine. That is I mean, I talk about everything but the kitchen sink beers. This is the very definition of that. And I can say, before we even dig into the specifics, I have had some truly great beers from Firestone Walker over the last few years. This is easily the best that I've had to date. Their individual beers are amazing, but you take a bunch of their individual amazing beers, make them a hybrid into a strong ale, and you are just left with just a spectacular explosion for the senses. The aromas are all over the place. The flavor profile is all over the place. So really where this beer starts is with the spirit barrels. And the tequila kind of comes in on the back end. You get the whiskey, and the whiskey kind of mellows out a little bit into the brandy, which is a lot richer. It's a lot more vinous. And then you definitely get that distinct tequila kick and flavor profile that is distinctly tequila from the blue agave. So it's a blend of flavors that you don't really ever expect to be together, but yet there they are. And it's very spirit forward on the front of each sip, and then it just opens up into boatloads of layers and complexity. Think of everything you could ever imagine from almost any big malt-centric beer style, and it's present in this. Just like on the nose. There's a ton of caramel. There's a ton of very deeply caramelized sugar. There's molasses. There's toffee. There's buttered toffee. There's fig. There's plum. There's apricot. There's raisin. There's grapes. I mean, it's basically everything you would expect from a big beer style that is a hodgepodge of all these different big beer styles, but thrown into one. And it's an absolute assault on the senses. Big nose just all over the board. Palate is the exact same thing. But what I can say is that these all come through clearly. I don't know how in the world you take a beer and make it a blend of so many big, just bold, in-your-face beers and then have it just work cohesively and balanced. I mean, bravo, Firestone Walker. Job well done. I never would have thought that possible. I expected this was going to be big and really, really good. And when I read about it, it had this really nice box presentation with a very nice leaflet inside telling you the whole story of the beer, what all they did with it, about the individual beers that went into it. Honestly, if you can get your hands on it and there's a craft beer lover in your life, it would make a tremendous gift. But maybe get a bottle for yourself because you don't want to skip on this. Unbelievable. So aside from the malt-centric and the yeast-centric traits, the crazy spirit barrel traits, what about the other underlying traits of the malt bill? Let's talk about the roast. What happens in this? Well, you do get some slight doughy notes. You do get a ton of bread notes. There's nothing in here that really tastes biscuity or crackery, but what kind of took me by surprise is there's actually, once you get about 30 seconds after that first sip is when it hit me. There is this big coffee ribbon that opens up that I didn't get anywhere in the nose and nowhere at all in the presence on the intensity of the first sip. It wasn't until 30-second mark when it plateaued, died down, it was kind of nearing the end of the finish, that this just very intense, very clear coffee ribbon just opened up on the flavor profile. And it's kind of a medium roast, very much like a classic house blend medium roast Arabica. I mean, it almost reminded me of the flavor of coffee that you get in coffee ice cream. Just distinctly, that's coffee. Not roasty, not smoky, not earthy, not bitters, just distinctly and clearly coffee. And it was just such a pleasant way to round out just the fullness, the richness, the bigness of this beer. It's got the right texture and weight. It's got just a massive aroma that's pungent and just multi-layered beyond belief. And then the flavor profile, this is like no other beer I've ever had. It's a blend of things that should not work together, one of them should override the other, and it doesn't. It doesn't happen. It just comes together and makes a cohesive whole. And what a spectacular 25th anniversary beer to brew as a present to yourself and to really nail it. They really stuck it with this one in the best way possible. So, that's a lot to process. We're going to jump back in for a second sip, let everything re-intensify. I'll pick out anything new, let you know if there's anything I missed. Then we will talk about the balance in general, and we'll talk about the finish. Unbelievable beer, This is one I highly recommend before I even get into scores. Take two. I'm immediately struck with the intensity of the spirits and how you can taste them all independently, but it's such an interesting blend. I would never think to get brandy with whiskey with tequila. They're all so big and unique and have very unique and individual profiles, but it really, really works. For me, kind of the top of the cap goes to that clever tequila barrel-aged beer addition. It's something you wouldn't think would work fighting with these other beers in here, but it absolutely does. They complement one another very, very well. Tequila has a natural sharpness to it that is in contrast to kind of the flavor profile of a typical ale, which is why it makes a very nice and unique and interesting beer drinking experience when you use a tequila barrel-aged beer. Whiskey, bourbon, brandy, even merlots, wines, port, all of these things play into the natural character traits of the beers themselves. But tequila is distinct. It's got the sharpness that just cuts through everything else. And how it blends in this, let's just say, spectrum of other flavors is just incredible. I absolutely love it. It's just a beautiful blend of things that you wouldn't think would actually work together, but they actually do. They're here in the glass working together. And yet again, I'm hitting right around that 30-second mark when the intensity of all of that fruit, all of the caramelization, the toffee, the dough, the yeast, and that ribbon of coffee opens up yet again. It is so peculiar, but peculiar in the best way possible. And it's twice in a row. So no, I don't think that I missed anything on the first trip around. On the second trip around, it just reconfirmed what I got. I mean, this beer shouldn't work, but it does. And it's absolutely fantastic. So all of that said, what about the balance? Well, what do you mean when you're talking about balance with a beer like this? There's so many things happening in it. I guess to be fair to the beer, we have to talk about the balance between the ratios. It's got some big, multi-different barrel aging beers, a bunch of different other beer styles in it, and they're all trying to play their part. And whatever balance they did, it works. And I mean in the most masterful way. This is easily one of the best put together beers I've ever had, because there's so much that went into it, so much happening in all of those individual pieces that it works together like this is an absolute masterpiece of a beer. The balance is perfection, and I don't know how they did it. It shouldn't work, but it does. Now for the finish. Well, it's a big beer. There's a lot of different barrels involved, a lot of bold, pungent flavors. And if you guessed that it's got a long finish, you would be correct. There's nothing dry about it. It's a big, wet, round, full ale with just boatloads of underlying malt nuance and barrel nuance still pushing through long after each sip. We're talking nearing 2 minutes. You're still tasting residual multi-barrel and just undercurrents of different caramels and toffees and figs and plums. They're still popping in and out. It's a very, very long finish. You get a lot of mileage on each sip. It's absolutely delicious, guys. This right here is what craft beer is all about. Bravo, Firestone Walker. Job well done. I'm going to take my time, sip on this one, come with my scores. When we come back, we will get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was Firestone Walker Brewing Company's 25th anniversary ale. Firestone Walker is based in Paso Robles, California. This one clocked in at 11.5% ABV. Basically a strong ale here. It's a combination of multiple different beers that they brewed. The autumn version of Parabola, tequila barreled Merkin, brandy barreled barley wine, sticky monkey, and whiskey barreled wheat wine. So yeah, just a ton of different styles of beer, different barrels, all big, bold, in-your-face excellence from Firestone Walker. And the end result was a beer that I really just reading on it with all these things in here, I mean, I expected it would be a good beer, but I didn't think it would work as its own thing, as a strong ale, and really let all of its constituent parts be noticeable and have their own voice. But the exact opposite was true, guys. This was just, I don't know how they did it. Taking what they did, blending it all together, and making this, and really being able to pick out every little independent piece that went into making it what it is. Absolutely incredible job by Firestone Walker. No need to go through the scores from top to bottom, because this very, very quickly, multiple beers like this is one of those tiny handful. I might be pushing 25-ish now that did get a perfect score. So it did get a perfect 10 out of 10 in all 10 categories. That's aroma, taste, body, mouthfeel, finish, head and retention, appearance, balance, feeling and intangible, and example of style. So the total score is, of course, a perfect 100, and a well-earned score indeed. Guys, I don't know how this beer worked like it did, but it was absolutely incredible. This was not a cheap beer. It was a big blend of a lot of different beers. But if you can still get your hands on it, it does come in a really nice box presentation, almost like a bottle of good scotch. Has a nice leaflet with a ton of really cool information. So if there's a craft beer lover in your life that enjoys big, kind of limited release beers, this might be one you might want to gift them. They would absolutely love it. This is one I highly recommend if you can still find. I got mine from Tavour. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications, hit the bell icon. It is right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.